Welcome back to Faith is the Podcast. Today we're going to take a deep dive into a sermon that I think really got me thinking about what it means to seek signs from God.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What kind of sermon are we talking about?
It was a sermon by Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell. It's called Wisdom and Wonder, Give Me a Sign, Matthew 12:38-45. And he kind of weaves together these personal stories with biblical analysis and this really powerful call to action. One of the things that struck me right away was how he used the story of the Queen of Sheba to challenge those who were demanding signs from Jesus.
Oh, that's a fascinating comparison. Can you remind me? Who was demanding signs, and why were they doing that?
Right, so the scene is Jesus being confronted by a group called the Pharisees. And they were a really powerful Jewish group, known for their strict adherence to religious law. And they kept demanding that Jesus prove his identity with some kind of spectacular sign. And Pastor Mitchell connects this back to Satan tempting Jesus in the wilderness, which I thought was really interesting. It's like this human need for outward proof. It just keeps popping up.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what's really going on beneath that desire for a sign. Like, is it just about wanting proof, or is there something deeper at play?
That's exactly what Pastor Mitchell dives into. He calls those seeking signs an evil and adulterous generation. He compares their relationship with Jesus to something fleeting and conditional, not a true commitment.
Wow, that's a pretty strong statement. It sounds like he's saying it's about more than just seeing miracles. It's about the nature of our relationship with God. Are we in it for the spectacle, or are we seeking something deeper?
Exactly. And to drive home this point, he draws a parallel between Jonah's experience in the whale and Jesus' death and resurrection. He's suggesting that the sign isn't necessarily this flashy miracle, but God consistently working through sacrifice and redemption.
So instead of looking for fireworks, maybe we should be looking for those subtler signs of God's love and presence in our lives.
That's the idea. And then Pastor Mitchell, he brings up the parable of the unclean spirit returning to a swept and empty house.
Ah, yes. That one always makes you think.
He uses it to warn against just cleaning up our outward actions without experiencing genuine inner transformation. It's like he's saying, you can't just sweep your problems under the rug. You need to invite something new in, the Holy Spirit.
I see what you mean. It's not about appearing righteous. It's about allowing God to change us from the inside out.
And to really drive this point home, he contrasts the faith of people like the Ninevites and the Queen of Sheba, people who were far from God, with the doubt of those who were supposed to be close to him, like the Pharisees. He basically says that even this Gentile woman who traveled from a distant land, seeking wisdom, had more faith than those who were standing right in front of Jesus.
Wow. So what do you think? What do you think is the takeaway for us, the listeners here? Why are we even talking about this?
Well, I think Pastor Mitchell is challenging us to examine our own hearts. Are we truly seeking God with all that we are? Or are we content with just going through the motions? Are we looking for the right answers? Or are we looking for genuine connection?
That's a powerful question, and one we should all probably ask ourselves from time to time.
Before we continue our deep dive, I want to take a quick moment to thank Business Referred for sponsoring this episode. They help local businesses connect with their community and grow their reach through effective advertising. If you're a business owner looking to expand your audience, reach out to them at info@businessreferred.com. They're doing great work, and we're so grateful for their support. Now let's get back to this idea of transformation. Pastor Mitchell doesn't just leave it at a theoretical level. He goes on to explain how this inner change plays out in our lives.
Right. He gets into some really practical examples.
Exactly. And that's what we'll be diving into in part 2 of this deep dive.
So you were saying that Pastor Mitchell gets into some practical examples of what this inner transformation looks like.
Yes. He brings up the concept of deliverance ministry, praying for people to be freed from negative spiritual influences. But he cautions that it's not enough to just focus on casting things out.
Oh, that's an interesting point. It's like trying to empty a bucket with a hole in the bottom. You can keep scooping out water, but if you don't fix the source of the problem, it's going to keep filling back up.
Exactly. He says that we need to focus on the transformative power of the gospel. It's not enough to just get rid of the bad stuff. We need to invite something new in, the Holy Spirit.
So it's like trading in a rundown shack for a beautiful mansion. You wouldn't just focus on clearing out the trash in the shack. You'd be excited about moving into a place that's completely new and beautiful.
That's a great analogy. And, he connects this back to those Pharisees who were demanding signs. He says that Israel, despite all its religious traditions and outward observance, had become like that empty house.
It's like they were so focused on following the rules and
Yeah.
appearing righteous that they missed the point entirely. Their hearts weren't truly connected to God.
And he doesn't shy away from saying that their rejection of Jesus, the very one who could fill that emptiness,
Mm.
made things even worse for them. It's a sobering reminder that outward religion without inward transformation can be a dangerous trap.
It's like having a beautifully decorated cake that's completely hollow on the inside. It might look impressive, but it's not going to satisfy anyone's hunger.
So where does the resurrection fit into all of this?
Well, Pastor Mitchell argues that the resurrection is the ultimate proof. It's the foundation for everything we believe. He says that if we can't accept the resurrection as evidence of God's love, power, and faithfulness, then nothing else will be enough.
It's like he's saying, stop asking for more signs. Embrace the one that's already been given.
And you know what's so beautiful is that he doesn't just leave it at a theological concept. He talks about how the resurrection informs his own life, his ministry, his commitment to Christ. It's something he experiences in his heart, not just in his head.
It reminds me of that saying, I don't just believe in God, I know God.
Exactly. It's not just a belief system. It's a lived reality.
And that's the invitation he extends to all of us, right? To not just hear about the resurrection, but to experience its power, to live in the light of its reality.
To allow it to transform our perspective,
Yeah.
our relationships, our very way of being in the world, to see those everyday miracles, those signs of God's love all around us.
Speaking of everyday miracles, I have to give a shout out to our sponsor, Business Referred. They're doing amazing things to help local businesses connect with their communities and grow. If you're a business owner looking to expand your reach, definitely check them out. You can reach them at info@businessreferred.com. We're so grateful for their support.
Okay, so we've talked about the need for inner transformation, the power of the resurrection. Where do we go from here? What does Pastor Mitchell say about how we actually live this out?
That's what I love about this sermon. He doesn't just leave us hanging. He gives us some concrete steps we can take.
So what are these? What are these concrete steps
Yeah.
that Pastor Mitchell talks about? How do we live out this transformed life?
Well, he emphasizes that it all starts with recognizing that the resurrection isn't just a past event. It's a living reality. Christ is alive and his presence is with us, even in the midst of our struggles.
It's like, instead of looking back at the empty tomb, we're invited to look around and see the risen Christ in our everyday lives.
Exactly. He encourages us to look for those whispers of grace in the ordinary moments, in the kindness of a stranger, the beauty of nature, the love that surrounds us. It's about choosing to believe, even when it's hard, to trust in God's promises, even when we don't see immediate results.
This reminds me of something you said earlier about seeing signs in everyday life. Instead of waiting for a huge dramatic miracle, we can notice those smaller, subtler ways God shows up.
Yes. And you know what else Pastor Mitchell talks about? He doesn't shy away from the reality that people sometimes get angry or disillusioned when their prayers aren't answered the way they expect, or when life doesn't go according to their plan.
Yeah, that's so relatable. We've all been there.
He challenges us to shift our focus from demanding signs to embracing the ultimate sign that's already been given. He's saying, look at the cross, look at the empty tomb, and let that be the foundation of your faith, even when life gets hard.
So it's not about having a perfect life or never experiencing doubt. It's about trusting in God's love and faithfulness in those difficult times.
He emphasizes that true faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting in God, even when we don't understand, even when we feel lost or alone.
It's about finding that unshakable hope in the face of challenges.
And you know what I found really inspiring? Pastor Mitchell doesn't just talk about this transformation for ourselves. He talks about sharing that hope with others, being a reflection of God's love and grace in a world that desperately needs it.
So it's about letting that inner transformation flow outward, touching the lives of those around us.
This deep dive has been so insightful, and I hope it's giving you, our listener, a lot to think about. Before you wrap up, I want to thank Business Referred for sponsoring this episode. If you're a local business looking to connect with your community, reach out to them at info@businessreferred.com. They're making a real difference for businesses in our area. And to all of you listening, thank you for tuning in to Faith is the Podcast. Maybe this week, instead of looking for a big flashing sign, try noticing those subtler ways God is working in your life and in the world